white men.
They don't want us to succeed.
How much more do we have to take?
So many awesome things coming this week and great discussions, but tonight it is just me with a block drop, and we'll talk about what they call CRT or critical race theory. So be right back. Yo, welcome back. Welcome back. I know it's been, well, it seems like forever. Really, it's only been like a couple of days. Been out of it, but whatever. Welcome back, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. It's the Leon Block. I'm happy to have you. What's going on tonight? For real. What's going on tonight? What y'all up to? I know for me, it's been kind of a busy week. So I'm getting back into the flow of things, really. I wanted to touch on a few bits of headlines going down. You can, of course, per usual, check out the headlines from Democracy Now!, which, of course, per usual, I'm dropping in the comments for y'all. Also, make sure you are liking and subscribing, whatever platform you are viewing us from. We would appreciate the support. All right, and I'm going to throw some other interesting articles in here too. Like I said, I'm going to be touching on what is known as CRT and how this particular guy, like, apparently kind of started the topic, the whole hoopla around people being misinformed on what it actually is, and who is actually being taught it. I actually am dropping some tons of links in the articles because some of this stuff is really important. Give me 1 second, and we are going to get into it because there's been a lot of I've been talking about a lot of crap stuff surrounding COP22, and they've been going hard, yo. Negotiators at a crucial United Nations Climate Summit in Glasgow, Scotland, have released a first draft of the COP26 final decision text, and it's being blasted by environmentalists as exceptionally weak. I'm not surprised. Greenpeace noted the 850-word document fails to acknowledge that fossil fuels are driving the climate crisis, while making no commitment to tangible actions to end global reliance on coal, oil, and gas. The draft text's release came as former President Barack Obama traveled to Glasgow, where he called on world leaders to step up their actions to avert climate disaster, while blasting China and Russia for hindering progress on the climate emergency. Well, this kind of explains it. Milsey Tan, a youth climate activist from the Philippines, said Obama's words ring hollow, considering the things that he said he was going to do kind of fell flat during his administration. It kind of is hypocritical. I mean, people do change, and also when you're a president, you are restricted for a lot of things. You're essentially a puppet. So nothing that you actually plan to do, if you had good intentions, you're not going to be able to do. Elsewhere in Glasgow, police reportedly used a battering ram early Monday morning to break into a disused former homeless shelter that had been converted into a temporary squat house for climate activists. Witnesses described Metropolitan Police and Welsh forces going from room to room with batons drawn. The officers' conduct reportedly shocked Scottish police, who arrived on the scene soon after the raid. Activists say they've since reopened the space. In Europe, Polish government have deployed thousands of more soldiers and riot police to its eastern border with Belarus as it intensifies its violent crackdown on migrants and refugees, mostly from the Middle East and Africa, who are fleeing violence, poverty, and the impacts of climate catastrophe. One Kurdish refugee from Syria who gained asylum in Austria traveled to that border to help his parents try and cross into Poland from Belarus. And it's not like they're trying to stay in Poland either. So, like, it's kind of fucked up. It's more than fucked up because you already know it's brown people, black and brown people, people of color trying to flee from the same things that these European countries are actually causing in their countries inadvertently. But nonetheless, historically, I'm putting the blame on them. Anyway, mobile phones belonging to at least 6 Palestinian human rights activists were hacked with the Israeli firm NSO Group's Pegasus spyware. The findings were published in a joint report by Amnesty International, Frontline Defenders, and the University of Toronto's Citizen Lab. Those hacked include workers with Palestinian nonprofits that were designated terrorist groups by Israel last month. A U.S. appeals court is allowing the WhatsApp messaging service to move forward with a lawsuit against NSO Group over allegedly targeting some of its servers in California to infect about 1,400 mobile devices with malware, a violation of state and federal law. This comes as Israel is lobbying the U.S. government to remove the NSO Group from a trade blacklist, arguing is crucial to Israel's foreign policy. The NSO Group's Pegasus spyware has been used by governments to target hundreds of activists, journalists, and government officials. And it doesn't stop with that. And people just turn a blind eye. Y'all is crazy. Climate activists protested outside the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow Monday, spotlighting the role of U.S. military in fueling the climate crisis. But military carbon emissions have largely been exempted from international climate treaties dating back to the 1997 Kyoto Protocol after lobbying from the U.S. Grassroots Global Justice Alliance and Iraq war veteran Eric Erdstrom, Afghanistan war veteran turned climate activist Nada Crawford, director of the Cost War Project, said the United States military has been a mechanism of environmental destruction. Yeah, the Cost of War Project estimated the U.S. military produced around 1.2 billion tons of carbon emissions between 2001 and 2017, with nearly a third coming from U.S. wars overseas, including in Afghanistan and Iraq. By one account, the U.S. military is a larger polluter than 140 countries combined, including numerous industrialized nations such as Sweden, Denmark, and Portugal. However, military carbon emissions have largely been exempted from international climate treaties dating back to 1997 Kyoto Protocol, thanks to lobbying from the U.S. At a time, a group of neoconservatives, including future Vice President and then Halliburton CEO Dick Cheney, argued in favor exempting all military emissions. So a group of climate activists on Monday staged a protest outside of the outside the COP, spotlighting the role of the U.S. military in the climate crisis. So it is going down. It is going down in Glasgow. I am here for all of this. Like, we need more of this. Environmentalists and my green folk, come out the shadows, come out, and support, keep coming together and showing love, y'all. It really is a movement that is growing, and as it needs to be honest. So now I wanted to get into CRT a little bit, and I'm going to post a link to the YouTube for a Facebook Live. Actually, I posted to Facebook too. That is hosted by Bernice King, actually. And it's a discussion with 3 other people concerning CRT, and it's awesome. It's spot on, and I just want to share it with you all, so you can check it out in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. But it's on Facebook. The live is on Facebook. Actually, the live's on YouTube too, because I found some of it on YouTube. I didn't feel like doing all the editing to give y'all clips, but I did want to read excerpts from this live, from what I was listening to, right? And so this is from 2 of the members that were on the panel. One is Professor Kendall Thomas, and the other is Professor Jacqueline Badalora, who teaches CRT. And Professor Thomas was kind of explaining, their points on CRT as far as being invited to his godson's kindergarten teacher, right? And he talks about how he found a book about the 1955 Montgomery bus boycotts, and talks about the Rosa Parks story. So he decided to sing a song, and it was again for kindergarten age kids, 5 to 6 years old, but it was a good way to teach them our history. So this is what he says. It was a great way for them to understand our common history. And what these laws do is shut down reading books, singing songs, and that in any way touch on race. So these laws are gag rule laws. Let understand a lot of the folks who oppose the critical race theory talk about being opposed to wokeness or to cancel culture, but these are gag rule laws that are scapegoating CRT to shut down a discussion of race. Also, that these laws are trying to distract Americans from the massive hits that public education budgets have taken in the last 10 years. We've seen this, we've seen in this country a chronic disinvestment of kindergarten through 12 public school education. And in the state of Georgia, um, the State Board of Education passed a resolution, I think last year, condemning critical race theory. And that same year, almost 1 billion would be cut from the Georgia public school budget, with a massive loss of jobs in the field of education, which harms education for young people who attend school in the state of Georgia. And so it's a distraction and a diversion, as he says, what I'd like to call a politics of compulsory illiteracy, whose goal is to keep the American people in Donald Trump's poorly educated, because a poorly educated populace cannot understand the ways in which the laws and policies of our country have been structurally positioned to disadvantage not just people of color, but poor and working class white Americans. And critical race theory certainly is also about impeding the emergence that we started to see really last year in the summer of 2020 of a multiracial, intergenerational social justice movement that was connecting the dots between racial and economic justice. I think that's what the people who oppose critical race theory are terrified of. But people will see that we cannot have economic and social justice in this country without racial justice, that the two things are closely bound together. So it's about the politicization and the weaponization of knowledge to perpetuate the literacy and to maintain the status quo of increasing inequality in the US that we've seen over the past 25, 30 years. And Jacqueline Badalora, again, who is that was well said, by the way, is a professor of CRT. She teaches it. And she said, I think it's really important, and I hope viewers at this point understand that there is no doubt that what is going on right now with regard to this legislation, that so-called anti-CRT legislation, it's not about critical race theory. It's absolutely not about that. So when we have to ask ourselves what it is about, what is it about? And to also point the ways in which, I wonder if people have seen some of the clips of school board meetings. I've been to some, where you have white women in tears saying, you will not give my children critical race theory, and invoking this fragile white female nature, which of course has a rich, deep rooted history in the US in the racial formation of this country. And so I'd like to take a second to address that, because I think it suggests that things that are such as a significant distortion of the truth. So if in the name of excluding, really what I think is happening is modern day book burning, right? So the exclusion of all these texts that are amazing, wonderful, important resources, historical documents, many of them. And so if they were saying to our white children that knowing historical truth is damaging to you, what does that mean about white people? I mean, about that what are we saying, that my white children are only okay if we lie to them by exclusion? I reject that version of whiteness. There's nothing healthy about that for white children, and of course not for children of color. But the anti-CRT, and I hate even calling it that because I feel like I'm giving it legitimacy, but this movement to exclude pieces of US history, this is what this is. So we are allowing this version of events that are going to keep our children from being equipped with the knowledge they need, regardless of their race, but knowledge they need to understand that the world we all live in, and secondarily, in order to confront the problems, that social problems of their time, of this time, how do you deny them the history to make sense of it and then tell them to go fix it? They will not succeed. Like, I'm telling you, they were really spitting gems here. Thomas follows up by having to mention, he says, mentioning earlier some of the dark money that's involved are in these attacks on critical race theory, such as 1776 Action Group that's led by former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson. Shaking my damn head. The Heritage Foundation, which is bankrolled by the Koch brothers. Concord Foundation, also known as the Judicial Crisis Network, which has put millions of dollars into stacking the federal courts with certain judges, but these groups are opposed to voting rights, and they're opposed to public education. They're opposed to what remains of the social safety net in this country, and they are opposed to democracy. So I always come back to Brown, which, however flawed, had some insights that I think we need. And there's a moment in the opinion in Brown where Chief Justice Warren, writing for the court, said that there's one reason Jim Crow public school education violates the Constitution is because education is the very foundation of citizenship. And one of the things that the Black Freedom Movement recognized that was that democracy and the full citizenship of African Americans could not be achieved without literacy. And that goes back to the Reconstruction, and the counter-revolution that is being waged today, I think, can only be understood in that large historical frame we need as a people to look to the example of a Black Reconstruction generation. If we're going to be able to fight back this racial illiteracy movement, because that's what it is, I stopped using the words critical race theory, and I like this part in this context because I think it obscured our understanding of what is really going on. This is an attack on democracy. That is weaponizing illiteracy to create scenes like the public school board meetings where you have parents crying crying tears of fucking making a spectacle of something that they don't even understand, and that is a tragedy for our democracy. So for me, the question is, how are discussions of race and racism historically in this country and the legacies of race and racism that we live with today, and equip our young people to be effective citizens in a democracy that is going to be made up of people from literally all over the globe. America today is a complex, multiracial, multi-ethnic society. And what does it mean to be a democracy? What does it mean to be a citizen in this democracy today? If you're handicapped and disabled from understanding how to live with and across social difference, that it seems to me is that what hangs in the balance here, and I think critical race theory is an effort to continue an unfinished project of democracy in this country that generations of blacks and their allies have waged since the very foundation of our group. It is motivated by love. It is a love of knowledge based movement. And I'm going to leave it on that because that is loaded information in the context of opinion and someone's just raw emotion of how they feel about this. But you know what? That shit's fucking real. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. I couldn't agree with all of that more than I could. Seriously. So yeah, that is what I wanted to touch on, was the importance of having discussions around CRT and white people checking other white people about CRT, white people understanding what CRT actually truly is, and that American history is all our history. We need to all really support one another in engaging in understanding our history as much and as frequently as we possibly can. Make sure you go check out previous episodes, podcasts, interviews, block drops, and more from our YouTube channel. You can also catch us on Twitter, streaming right now, and Facebook as well in tandem with YouTube. You can also check us out on Instagram. Our TikTok is kind of defunct right now, but if you search it, there is content on there. So definitely check that out too. I thank you for tuning in to the Leon Block, y'all. Like, for real, I always appreciate the support. Make sure you meditate on your path, you celebrate your being, liberate your spirit, and educate yourself, y'all. I'm John Tell. Arm yourself with knowledge and have a blessed journey.
Leon.